on this channel in criticizing Israel when it deserves to be criticized, and it does deserve to be criticized often. In basically its lack of action or insufficient action when it comes to how it conducts itself in this war, but even with the limited way in which it has conducted itself, Israel has achieved some absolutely amazing things, especially over the past 6 or 7 months, things that have already made the Middle East a better and safer place and have put Israel just a few short steps, I think, from really changing the Middle East potentially forever, and hopefully those few steps will be taken. Um, so, welcome to the reality show. I'm joined by Jonathan Honig and Anders Ingemarsson. Anders, I, I dislike the concept of tradition because I think it doesn't really have a valid use. Like if you do something, have a certain habit, and so on, and your reason for doing it is, my father did it and his father before me. That's not that's not a good enough reason. Now it could be that whatever that habit is a good thing. But then the reason you do it is because it's good, not because it's tradition. That being said, here at ARCUK, we have had this sort of tradition of a end of year episode, and I don't know if there's a better word for it, but we'll do it and we'll keep doing it because I think it's a good way to kind of wrap up the year. And I think today, especially considering the year the world has had and the year ARCUK has had. This is a this is a nice way to do our end of year episode. So, what are your general thoughts on tradition, and what are your thoughts on the way Israel has conducted itself recently?
I think there are good and bad traditions, as you say, and I think wrapping up the year is a perfectly reasonable tradition to take stock and then look forward to the next year. So I don't have a problem with that at all. Now, I think you summed it up pretty well in your introduction that despite all the criticism we have of Israel and the slowness with which we thought it started out this war that is now going on, gosh, is it 14 months, 15 months? Yeah, but as you also said, what we've seen in the last half of this year, and there was actually especially a period between, I think, July 31st and the end of October, 3 months that really, I think, turned things around and set us up for what we hope will be an even better 2025.
And Jonathan, before I go to you, let me thank Yotam. Thank you for the super chat. Yotam says, "Here's to the final move in Tehran, 2025." Absolutely, the only way I disagree with that is if Israel can pull it off in the next 4 hours. I don't know what the time in Tehran is. It might be less than that. And thank you, Alexis, for the super chat. Alexis says, "Thanks for all the hard work this year. Thank you for your support." And yeah, Jonathan.
Yeah, well, thanks for all of our super chatters and monthly subscribers, and of course to Jim Brown's book, Money Creation and Its Consequences: A Black Hole in Economics. We need that support. We appreciate it. But Razi, it's been I end the year on a bit of a sad note. I mean, we've still got hostages, including American hostages, that are not released. And I read some headline yesterday that, of course, Hamas has some monkey business now that they don't want to release the names or all the names. But Israel had, as we're proposing today, some real military achievements this year. Growing up, it was always the raid in Entebbe that was held out as this, and it really was this incredible, thoughtful, brilliant military operation. And we saw a number of those, I think, that probably even eclipsed the raid in Entebbe. One was the hostage rescue in Gaza that we talked about on the show. I mean, the knowledge, the military precision, the ironically respect for life that Israel undertakes in all of these military operations. And of course, the beeper, the Hezbollah beeper attack, really preemptive attack, will be studied in military colleges for decades and decades as an absolute brilliant presentation of military strategy, efficiency, and that's also what accounts. I mean, the complete dismantling of that entire organization with literally, I mean, it seems like a flick of a switch, but it was all those incredible minds, the IDF, the Mossad, all of Israelis' forces. So, I end the year thankful as some of our super chatters are for the IDF, thankful for our super chatters, but more also with our thoughts with the hostages, for me at least, especially the American hostages still being held in the Middle East.
Yeah, thank you, Akira, for becoming a member of the ARCUK YouTube channel. Thank you, Alex, for the super chat. Alex says, have some of my Zionist shekels. Well, that is my favorite type of shekels. Although, for the anti-Zionist watching, feel free to send a super chat as well. We will gladly accept that. And yeah, with the hostages, many still being 100 still being held, and we don't know how many of them are alive. There is that moment in June where this absolutely amazing and it's one of many amazing things that Israel has done this past year, but that absolutely amazing operation where for a month running up to it, IDF personnel or Israelis were living in the building next to it, making sure that they know and planning this operation, where of course the hostages were held as we know, as is the case with many, if not most, if not all of the hostages held by your regular Gaza civilians. And Israel went in full force, seemingly complete disregard for anybody in the way, which is the way to do it, because those people showed complete disregard to Israeli lives, or their only regard was to end those lives or to hold the hostages. And yeah, it does make you think if Israel, if that was Israel's approach to the enemy, it's complete disregard until the moment when the other side surrenders uh, and gives back the hostages. This is what they will go through. This war would have been over much earlier. Anders.
Yes, I agree with pretty much everything you said. What and that operation, and back to what Jonathan said about the pager operation being studied for decades to come. And I can't wait for the movie to come out. It'll probably take a while, but that'll be a smash hit, at least in my book. It'll be really exciting. Um, yeah, and so hopefully what I'm hoping here is that Israel, having had all these successful operations this year, or in the second half of including the freeing those hostages, and then decapitating a bunch of the opponent leadership. Hopefully they will take that now into the new year and not slack off, but continue with that. I think one of the interesting things here, and I would be interested in hearing both of your thoughts on this, is that it seems to me that Israel somewhat reluctantly have finally realized that they can and have to go it alone in many of these things, despite the what at least outward opposition of the Biden administration. In many cases, they have stood up and offered at least some defense of their actions, and hopefully that will encourage them to go forward in the same manner, and hopefully we will see more support from the US in 2025 than what we have seen in 2024.
Yeah. Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Yeah, on that point, I know I just said it on the Daily Objective, but I can't stop repeating this because of how amazing it is that it actually happened. Biden, we make fun of him a lot for his senior moments, but what he delivered without any senior moment was that press conference after the fall of Assad, where he's taking credit because he supported, because of America's unwavering support for Israel's war against Hezbollah, which was not, hundreds of years ago. We don't need to look at the history books to we remember the daily announcements against de-escalation from the US. And this is the story he's telling us. So yeah, Israel, you might get condemned for some stuff while you're doing it, but the world will forget that they condemned and start thanking you as soon as it's over. Jonathan.
I mean, as Razi and the coverage here on the ARC UK channel of the war and the consistency in our moral perspective, guided by Ayn Rand's objectivism, obviously, for me, it brings me back to a really human question and sensibility of all the people, all the completely innocent Israelis, including those serving in the military forces and those being held hostage, whose lives have been completely disrupted by these attacks. And as I get a little older now, I mean, even more reflective. I mean, how much is an hour of your life worth? How much is a year of your life worth? And to have these young people's lives in like the midst of their prime, their 20s and late teens and 30s, they should be building Israel, being in businesses, creating new technologies, building things, not being forced, and I forced because of the draft and also because of the circumstances to fight. I mean, against these, as we've covered them for years now, these medieval, backward theocratic cultures of the Middle East. So I have great empathy with Israelis there. I mean, people on our own channel who have to run into bomb shelters every couple of hours. I mean, that's not a way to live. So I really implore Israelis' leadership to finish these jobs, win the Middle East. The world will thank you. I certainly hope your citizenry will thank you. But finally wipe these just disgusting Islamic scourges from the earth once and for all.
Yeah, we have one of those pro-Hamas trolls in the chat who repeats those, the whole babies thing, Palestinian babies, and Davy Boy says lots of babies in Gaza have beards and carry machine guns. Yeah, that's true, but also there are babies and there are children who are killed in this war, which is all the more reason to despise Hamas and to despise Palestinianism, let's call it that. Remember, the parents of these babies either participated in October 7th or celebrated on the streets in October 7th and are still holding hostages or are not doing anything to prevent or to release the hostages. And the only reason this war is continuing is because the Palestinians want it to continue. At any point, they can decide to end it by releasing the hostages and surrendering. So when Palestinian babies die, it is the fault of the Palestinians, and let's not forget that. And I think there was something else I wanted to read here, but I don't remember what it is. So I'll look at it. But there is a clip that the IDF produced today that we have queued up. So Daniel, if you have that ready, let's watch it.
I don't have that specific one. I can get it, but not it.
Do you want to play something else? We have a bunch
Sure.
of clips ready, and yeah, I'm sure they're all good.
Oh boy, that alone, I feel like I just aged a year having just even listened to that much of whatever that happened to be. But
Sorry, I was looking at the chat. Daniel, was that the video of the president of Iran looking up at during the
Supreme Leader.
whatever? Sorry, apologies for getting his title wrong. Yeah.
If you have a supreme leader, there's something wrong. There's something wrong with your culture if you have a supreme leader. Let me just throw it out there as a conversation talking point.
Yes, and that's a reminder that when people on this channel called me the Lord Emperor, it was not with my consent or approval. But yes, this was a funny moment because you see him looking up and wondering what's coming because this was such an unexpected thing that for Israel to kill the leader of Hamas. He's sitting in Qatar, loving life and the Islamic version of it, and all of a sudden he's in Iran, the maybe a safer place than Qatar, and turns out it's not that safe. Anders.
Yeah, no, I love that image with him glancing up to the sky, just waiting for a drone to hit him or something. And you know, these guys are scared. The ones that are left, they're really scared. You know, when they learn that for instance, Israel had a bomb planted months in advance to the one that killed Hanaya. And you know, so in Iran, I mean, what do they know? Are they booby trapped, and Israel is just waiting to push the button? You know, who knows? So that's a pretty cool advantage that Israel has there, whether in effect they do have it or not. But the fact that what they have done over the last few months here, you know, means that nobody's safe back there.
And
Yeah, no, these guys are definitely feeling it.
and it teaches, Anders, I didn't mean to step on you, but it teaches them things like the pager, the threat of bombs dropping from the sky. It teaches them that this supposedly unwinnable war is winnable by the Israelis, and the Israelis are winning it. And we've talked about for a year now. Every little peace offering and handout and aid truck, says to the terrorists who started and perpetuate these wars that you're winning. You're wearing the Israelis down. Just give it some time. They're going to break, they're going to buckle, they're going to fold. And what you need to do is, in my opinion, this certainly isn't objectivism, but I've been influenced by many objectivists, is break their spirit to live. Let all these young Palestinian men know there's no way they can live. And there's no way they can succeed at all. And there's no glory to come. One of those, I mean, everything is iconic these days, which is a load, but like Sinwar with his little, like, I mean, what is that? Is that how you want to go out? Is that like a blaze of glory for, young men in their, teens and 20s looking to kind of make their mark in the world? And, they need to learn that there is no hope. And I'm hoping that's exactly what Israel is teaching.
Alex says in the chat, I hope we did the helicopter attack. Some rumors are going around saying we did, but nothing confirmed. I don't know. Why would I'd be surprised, because why? Like, of all the people, why would you kill this, the president of Iran, who's not the most significant, why not? But one thing I loved about this past year is the paranoia, which is already built into Islamic thinking, if you want to use that word, which is a very generous use of the word. And, so somebody on WhatsApp or whatever says, oh, this was done by Mossad agent Eli Copter. And like some news outlets actually repeat this as a thing. And, I think Israel has been playing on the built-in paranoia in Islam, religion that tells you that the trees and the rocks will start speaking when a Jew is hiding behind them. In things like the pager attacks, I mean, again, they used pagers. Remember, they used pagers because they were afraid that their phones are being tracked. All of a sudden, all these pagers explode. And then the next day, the walkie-talkies explode. I mean, that's just beautiful. And I know we've talked about it a lot, but it's yeah, it's fun
And,
to
and,
remember.
and hopefully, I mean, hopefully inspires them. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Rising, but I think you'd say to wave the white flag, damn it. I mean, we've talked about if Israelis are so deadly, how come they haven't broken the spirit of these groups to fight, continue fighting, mothers to continue sending their sons to go and on these senseless, needless wars. So, that's what I love about things like the pager. And, we saw footage where it literally just exploded on the person carrying it. And at the shopping mall or whatever, the I don't say innocents, but let's say non-combatants just a couple meters away, seemingly unharmed completely. Smart warfare, super tough warfare that hopefully sends the message that, raise that white flag and move on to a new type of culture in the Middle East.
Yeah. Anders?
Yeah, well, on the question why they haven't raised the white flag yet, I think it is because they still hold out hope, and I think there is still a chance for it, that there will be a ceasefire and negotiation, and we'll be back to not square one, but to a situation that is not unlike what we had before, and where Gaza is still self-governing and the West Bank is, and so on and so forth. And I don't think they're totally unrealistic in those hopes, but I really hope that Israel is once and for all realizing that that's not the way to go. And yes, they're tired of the war. They want to go back to their regular lives, of course, but unfortunately, they are in the wrong neighborhood for that.
Yeah, now with these savages who are attacking Israel, Israel has every right to just wipe them out, wipe them out, like bomb them from the air. There's no need to be so targeted, but in the history of warfare, there has never been a more targeted attack as the pager attack, targeting Hezbollah commanders wherever they are in Lebanon, and targeting specifically them, and designing the explosives so that it only hits them. And yet the anti-Israel crowd, what I love about this is what it shows about the anti-Israel crowd. Yeah, we'll play it in a second. I just want to make the point that what it says about the anti-Israel crowd, and we have a beautiful example here from a troll in the chat saying, people at grocery store can't be called innocents because, one of the famous videos is somebody exploding in a grocery store. I mean, this is a terrorist whose full-time job is the murder of Jews, and he was specifically targeted. But because he's in a grocery store, it is the Jews trying not to die who are at fault here. Let's roll the clip and then try to understand how these people process information. There's literally somebody right next to him who's running off seemingly unharmed. And again, a troll in the chat specifically, this is what he was talking about. Thank you, troll, for specifically mentioning that incident, because we can see in the video, it is only the terrorist who is hurt. Now, again, I think it's perfectly a good thing to bomb that place if the terrorist is there. And if anybody is innocent, well, that's unfortunate. But again, never in the history of warfare has anything been more targeted than the pager attack.
Yeah, and Israel does not want, I don't speak on behalf of the state, but Israel is not a country that seeks war. It is not a country that starts these wars and goes out and it's conquest, and and contrast, Razi, what you're identifying, the technological wizardry, the thought that goes behind designing the pager, creating the whole fake company so that they buy the pager, and the timing of I mean, compare that to what I've seen the Palestinians do, which is basically dig up water pipes that have been probably given to them through aid and funding to create completely dumb rockets, which they just lob haphazardly and hit anywhere in Israel, churches, homes, civilian, commercial, it doesn't even matter. So just compare the methods of warfare, between these two entities, not to mention who started it. I mean, the pager and all of these Israeli successes is a great example of, as they say, I don't know how you say FAFO in Hebrew, but they started a war against Israel. Multiple fronts started wars against Israel, and Israel should finish them once and for all.
Thank you, Jeff Bannister, for the very generous super chat. Jeff says, wishing all the good people at ARCUK a fantastic new year to come. Have
Thanks,
a
Jeff.
fantastic new year as well. Alex says about that clip that we just saw and heard, squeal like a piggy. Of course, this is more like what is the halal version of bacon? It's squeal like a turkey, I guess. Anders.
I don't know what the halal version is actually, but I'm sure some of our super chatters
It's not
can
recommended. It's really, bacon.
Yeah.
Bacon is one of the greatest things on earth, and you can
Right, I
understand
know.
if
Yeah.
somebody is deprived of bacon, how they end up, being a terrorist. But
Yeah. So I want to mention one additional observation, and again, I would like your thoughts on this because I'm not sure it's because I'm in somewhat of a happy bubble, but I think what we've seen over the last few months too, as a result of these attacks and these successes of Israel's, is that the enemies of Israel in the West have also been discouraged. Now, there is obviously the continuous criticism about genocide in Gaza and so on and so forth. But just as we identify the fact that in order to root out Hamas and Hezbollah once and for all, the population has to be so discouraged that they give up the fight and move on to live normal lives instead. And I think that we've seen something similar in the criticism in the West. Maybe there's a difference between the US and the UK, but it has certainly quieted down in the last few months. So I don't know what you think about that.
Sorry, can you repeat the last part? I'm
Yeah, no.
distracted by it.
Just as we're, I think the criticism of Israel in the West has quieted down as
Yeah.
Israel has piled on these successes over the last few months.
Yes, and I think this is also historically true. You know, Israel in I wasn't around, but from what I heard in 1967, people were, you know, impressed by Israel because it fought to defend itself. And yeah, in the last 6, 7 months, Israel is seriously fighting to defend itself. Now, there are people who hate Israel, period, and they will be against anything Israel does. But yeah, I can't help but go back to that press conference of Biden. He can't you know, he wants to be a part of it. He wants to be a part of the success that of you know, the things he was against. And I think that more than anything else, yeah, shows this both quieting down of the criticism, at least from people in leadership position, and shows the, you know, that the other side is weak. Now, you mentioned like the fact that Israel is all but destroyed Hezbollah and Hamas. But remember, the serious anti-Israel people support Hezbollah and Hamas. We mentioned yesterday Jimmy Carter. Well, we talked yesterday about Jimmy Carter. I didn't talk about him, but I have a lot to say about him. He was a vile anti-Semite who, you know, actually made excuses for Hamas and has spoken about meeting leaders of Hamas. So a Jimmy Carter, a Jeremy Corbyn, an Owen Jones will never be okay with Israel until it's wiped off the map. But yeah, I think the people who weren't clear about it, much like with Ukraine, you know, at the beginning, people were like, okay, Russia's going to roll over Ukraine in a couple of days. And when Ukraine actually fought back, that was when the West was ready to support Ukraine.
Yeah, and I agree with you that those people will never change their mind, but I think some of them are retreating to the shadows, you know, in the sense that they feel that their ideas are not resonating as well any longer as they may have done 6, 8, 10 months ago.
Anders, I'll build off something you mentioned about basically respect in the West. You know, once Israel started, in effect, standing up for itself militarily, you know, there's, as we've talked about, there's still obviously hostages, still American hostages being held, you know, by Hamas. And, you know, it just reminds me back during when Iranians took the U.S. embassy, you know, there were a lot of U.S. hostages and there was a lot of American outrage. I don't see anywhere near that type of, in American news and media, there's not everyday articles about, well, when are the American hostages in the Middle East going to be released? You don't see this public outcry about it. And I think that's terrible. And, you know, what certainly I'd like to see is an American rescue attempt, similar to what Israel did. I mean, Israel, that rescue success we talked about this year, Razi, was unbelievable. why isn't America tried anything like that? I mean, the message to me as an American is don't go anywhere because they're not going to come get you. They're not going to come break you out. They're just going to kind of let a year, 2 years go by while you're being held hostage against your will. I mean, Rand has those two essays. One is the nature of government. You know, what is the purpose of government? What is the role of government? And it's to protect you. It's to come get you when you're being held hostage, in my opinion. So that's when I think people stood up and cheer. I know I did, stood up and cheered for Israel, acting like what a government's supposed to act like, and protecting you, protecting your body, protecting your possessions, and protecting your rights.
Yeah, you mentioned the hostage situation in Iran. Well, yeah, when the hostages were taken in the U.S. embassy, uh, the U.S. president at the time, Jimmy Carter, didn't really have much object. Well, he objected. He verbally objected, but it was an act of war against the U.S. It was a moment when the U.S. had full legitimacy to end the Iranian regime right when it was coming to power and really prevent the Middle East from becoming what it was. But not only did he not do that, decades later, he has still
What
expressed
did Rand?
support.
What did Rand tell Donahue about? As just your point about they could have gone in there in the first 2 days, 5 days. You have the quote, or just summarize for the audience.
I usually do, yeah, but it was something like we should have gone in on day one or day two with full force, and since we haven't, it's too late now. And this was months later. It's too late, and it'll take us years. She said years or decades to live it down. And of course, that is still,
Right. It was like if we didn't go there in the first day or two, you know, and Rand once again prophetic. We say that in quotes, but completely foresaw, you know, this decades of growth by militant Islam.
There's something I often say on shows about how the Palestinian propaganda machine works and how different elements, in the media, in these organizations like Amnesty and so on, put something out, and then others say, "Well, look, the experts are saying." So one of the anti-Israel trolls says. Lancet estimates that over 100,000 civilians are dead in Gaza. I think it was like 170, 180. I don't remember the exact number, but they didn't estimate it. They said that that might be the case, and then, and of course, we covered that. We did at least 2 shows, I think 3 shows on it so far, and how terrible it is. It's an opinion piece. This is not an estimate. This is a guess, and not a guesstimate either, just a pure guess. But yeah, people can say now, oh, look, the prestigious medical journal, The Lancet. Well, okay, it's worth nothing. Read the actual thing and tell me
And read,
that's what.
and read Ayn Rand on her perspective on innocence in war. You know, read what
And
she had to say about so-called innocence in war, the innocents who make the war machine possible, who fund it, who give it sanction, who send their children to participate in it, who enables it, the
and
innocents.
Yeah, and I'll read PC because he sent a super chat. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, Razi, whenever Israel defends itself, it's genocide according to the international community. Yes, well, it's genocide according to what they say. I don't think anybody actually thinks that that's what it is, but that has caught on, and that's the point of it. And thank you, PC, for another super chat. PC says, Irish president hates Israel. And thank you, PC, for another super chat. PC says, Razi, I'm not sad Carter is gone. 100 is old, LOL. I'm not sad he's gone. Nothing to do with his age. Evil people, dying is not something that saddens me. Anders.
Yeah, so going back to what Jonathan said, quoting or referencing Ms. Rand's view on innocence in war, I mean, it's perfectly applicable to the Gaza situation. You mentioned earlier that every Palestinian baby who is killed in this is on Hamas. Hamas, and a large portion of the population, as we know, is supporting or has been supported of Hamas. 70% of them voted them into power 20 years ago. Now, But we're all individuals, and I'm sure even in Gaza, there are some people who would look forward to a future in peace where they can pursue their lives and their happiness. And those people in a war situation, they are happy for the other party to come and basically rescue them. And they're willing to risk whatever consequences would be needed because of that. So I'm sure there are people in Gaza today who can't wait for Israel to finish this so that they can move on.
Yeah, no good person is okay with living under a regime like Hamas, and you either fight against it or you get out. Those are your options when you are in such a situation. But the person in the chat who I earlier referred to as a troll and then said he's not a troll, he's just asking questions, although something to that effect, although the questions are of a kind of there's a pattern there, says, please tell me what happens the next day. How will the actions Israel takes not radicalize another generation in a cycle of violence? Killing civilians is wrong. Hamas is wrong. The IDF is wrong too. Yeah, this is what a pro-Hamas person says, and I can tell you, Mrs. Ginsburg and I spent Christmas in Germany, in Berlin, and there's a lot to hope for when it comes to the philosophy there. But Germany is now a civilized country. Japan is a civilized country. Those countries were bombed, and their civilians were bombed because the countries that were at war with them understood that to win the war, you don't just need to destroy the current military capabilities of the other side. You need to destroy whatever it is in their culture that made them think that this is a good idea. And the bombing of cities in Germany and in Japan are the reason that those countries are now civilized. And the fact that when the West has fought wars since, they fight them with humanitarian aid is the reason why these other sides are radicalized, as you say. I mean, Israel has spent 30 years, almost to the day, since up to October 7th, in begging the Palestinians for peace. I mean, it was in September of 1993 that they signed the Oslo Accords, that gave the PLO, a terrorist organization, control of some of the land in the West Bank and Gaza as the first step towards a Palestinian state. Gave them arms to control that area, and within months, within weeks, I think of the first stage of implementing that deal, Israel started having buses explode in the country, and the Palestinian terrorism Israel has seen since the start of the peace process has been something that they could never have imagined up until then. And what Israel is seeing now is that the other side is less capable of fighting. So no, when you have a society that is hell-bent on mass murder, as the Palestinians are, the way you fight that is not by asking them not to do it and paying them not to do it. It's by fighting them and making it impossible for them to continue doing that.
Right. Is it kind of built into that question is a fallacy that what's inspiring all this Islamic hatred towards Israel is Israel's retaliation against Islamist aggression. But as we've covered for a year, it's actually the weakness. In two books, I think Razi and Anders would join me in recommending. One is Nothing Less Than Victory, Decisive Wars and Lessons of History by John David Lewis. Dr. Lewis was a objectivist who died maybe about 8 or 9 years ago. This is a brilliant book on actually winning wars. And the other one is Ilan Journo's book, Winning the Unwinnable War. Ilan is also an outstanding objectivist and gets into exactly, I think, the point we're trying to make here is that aggression towards an enemy is not ensuring further aggression. If it's complete, it's ensuring, in my opinion, further peace. And these books get into that point.
Anders.
I second those two recommendations as well. Excellent, excellent reads. And John, gosh, John
David
Lewis unfortunately passed away way too early. Now, when it comes to the culture in those countries that were defeated in World War II, Japan and Germany, and my wife is German, so I'm relatively familiar with the country. But we put a lid on it, and that's a really good thing. But the underlying philosophy in both of these countries is still in place. So putting a lid on it buys us time because in the end, a rational philosophy has to take hold. As we see in Germany today, I mean, they're as good at sacrificing as they ever were. It was the Nazis during World War II. Today, they're all about sacrificing to the earth through their environmentalist movement and such, or to their fellow citizens through their massive welfare programs. And here in the U.S., we basically have the same problem, although it's hasn't gone as far. So we can't rest on our laurels. I just want to say that. And when it comes to the Middle East and to the question of the Palestinians, I mean, it will be a question of generations, absolutely, before you can put a lid on it and people can go on and live rational and productive lives. But for the philosophy to change, that will take time.
Yeah. One of the things that's very, very noticeable in Berlin is there's, memorials and museums commemorating the Holocaust. But there's a street named after Karl Marx. There's a statue of Marx and Engels in Karl Marx Park or whatever it's called. So yeah, some lessons of history have been learned partially and some have not at all. Ina says in the chat, welcome back, Ina. She says there is a huge Hanukkah at Brandenburg Gate in Berlin. Yes, I saw that. But something else I noticed on one of the last days there was we went to an Israeli restaurant because I like Israeli food, and I noticed across the street there was this armed police officer walking back and forth, and I didn't really understand what was going on. And I looked at Google Maps, and it's a synagogue. And then later that day, we passed by another synagogue, and there was armed police there as well. So yeah, Berlin 2024 is not safe for Jews. I want to also address a couple of things before we go to another video. The person who asked the question about what happens next doesn't answer my point, but says, Razi, the rules of war were changed after World War II with the Geneva Convention to stop the indiscriminate bombing like now. Well, no, they were not to stop the indiscriminate bombing. They were to stop basically the good guys in any war from defending themselves. That at least is what is happening in effect. That is what those rules are. Those rules are not something that Hamas kept in mind when they did what they did on October 7th. They are something that Israel keeps in mind, which is why over 800 soldiers, Israeli soldiers, have died since the war started, mostly protecting Palestinian civilians, because in any ground operation that Israel does, an aerial bombardment is also an option that I would go for, where the targets would certainly be killed. It's certainly a higher probability than from a ground operation, but so would so-called innocent civilians. So Israel is unfortunately doing more than any country in history to protect civilians on the other side. They are succeeding in that, and they are paying the price in the deaths of its own soldiers. Thank you, Alexis, for the super chat. Alexis says, Middle East developments wish list for 2025. The fall of the Houthis, the fall of the Iranian regime, and stepping it up in Gaza. Anders.
Yes, are we talking 2025 now?
Yes.
Yeah, so I actually made my own list of 4 items that I want to see, and you've already mentioned 2 of them. So that Iran's Islamist totalitarian regime falls, and as a result, and I would love to see it happen after joint military action by the Israel and the US to destroy the nuclear program, to take out Iran's military installations, etc., and perhaps also their oil producing capacity. And as a result of that, these Iranian stooges, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, Iraqi Islamist or Shiite militias, they're just laying down their weapons and dissolve. And then my point number 3 here is that Israel declares that it will occupy Gaza, the West Bank, southern Syria, and southern Lebanon for the foreseeable future, and that they will start to create a United States of the Levant that will be a representative of Western civilization in that backward corner of the world.
Jonathan, your wish list for the Middle East for 2025.
Well, that's more of an observation, I think, than a wish list. And I always think of Rand's comment about how ideas move the world. So I guess my wish list is for some better ideas in the Middle East, particularly ex-Israel. The Middle East it's such a great kind of real-time experiment being played out. Just like, for example, contrast Havana, Cuba, or even contrast Key West, Florida with Havana, Cuba, 90 miles away. It's like completely different cultures because of the different ideas. Or North Korea and South Korea. You have, a comparatively prosperous, thriving, modern society, democratic society, and, basically a modern day slave society. And I think that for me, the Middle East is very much the same thing. You have, Israel, the primarily rights respecting country in the Middle East, against this backdrop of all of these backward, it's just the level of backwardness they have, religious, mysticism and Islamist totalitarianism. And it's just such a great real-time experiment being played out. The success of Israel, the triumph of medical technology, and all these different types of miracles they come up with, and we have become wealthy doing it. Israeli stocks actually have gone up dramatically this year, which is great, and it's an indication of, while the rest of the Middle East specializes in, conquest and military operations, Israel, God bless it, I say that in quotes, powers on, innovating and benefiting themselves and the world writ large.
And I know also on your wish list is that we play some more video, but before that, there are a couple of super chats, but I also want to disagree with you on something, because I agree with you, better ideas in the Middle East, but I think better ideas in Israel are more important than better ideas elsewhere, because Israel is already, good, as almost as good as it gets in the world, in at least in some ways. But there are still some bad ideas, and if those took a back seat and Israeli society was more rational, first of all, they would finish the job, and also the incredible contributions to prosperity worldwide that Israel already makes will only continue to grow. Thank you, PC, for another super chat. PC says that the society is evil. I'm guessing you mean Palestinian society, in which case I agree. Thank you, Jeff, for another super generous super chat. Jeff says, you say kneel, I stand. You say silence, I speak. You say submit, I will not. I am free. That's from You Say Kneel by Quent Cordair. I read a Quent Cordair poem at the end of the Daily Objective. It's only fitting that we have Quent Cordair on the reality show as well. And maybe one of my New Year's resolutions should be to practice how to read poetry. But definitely top of my wish list is more super chats like that. Yeah, ARCUK in 2024 has gotten, I don't know if Daniel knows exactly, but it's something like more than 3 times as many views as we've had in our entire history up until 2024. And we can do a lot more. Everything we do is still very much on a shoestring budget. And the things we could do with more man hours and more budget to just do more on the channel that will make our content more attractive to people, that'll make it more likely that people will click our videos. And yeah, the ideas you hear here are unique, and certainly in terms of daily commentary, yeah, I don't think you can find it anywhere else. So once again, I encourage people to support our work to the extent that you can and want to, and of course, sharing our content and helping it get out there to more people is always a way to support it. Remember, we are the reality show is also available on X, where sharing has more of an impact. It's virality is much more user driven on X than it is on YouTube. So yeah, consider supporting any way you can. And yeah, Jonathan, you asked for more videos a long time ago, so let's roll another video.
Let's watch the IDF video they published today.
Yeah. Now, of course, not all of that was positive, but yeah, I mean, the amount, the number of things that are positive is, I remember what we were talking about this time last year, and yeah, we've come a long way in a good direction. Thank you, Enric, for the super chat. Enric says, "Happy New Year, ARCUKers, and a much more successful 2025." Thank you. Anders, parting thoughts?
Yes, as we see Israel as a beacon of Western civilization, of hope in the Middle East. And yes, Israel has its fault. I agree with you that better ideas in Israel is probably more important than in the rest of the Middle East right now, because there is still that nagging doubt in me that they will let this slip through their fingers once again. But hopefully I'm wrong on that point. And just like Israel is a beacon of Western civilization in the Middle East, then Ayn Rand Centre UK is a beacon of individual rights, of capitalism, limited government in the UK. And God knows the UK needs it as well.
Yep, absolutely. Jonathan, parting
Well,
thoughts?
we want you to read Ayn Rand. There's too many so-called experts in Ayn Rand out there who really aren't familiar with her ideas. So part of our hope is to inspire you to pick up something by Ayn Rand, some of her fiction, some of her nonfiction. Maybe you're interested in her politics. I edited a book called A New Textbook of Americanism, which features her perspective on Americanism and American politics. So better your life in 2025 by picking up something by Ayn Rand and by supporting what we're doing here with Ayn Rand Centre UK. As Razi alluded to, we're here 7 days a week with original programming inspired by Ayn Rand. That's a pretty great value proposition. And all we're asking is a little bit of a trade in return. So if you enjoy what we do here day after day after day, being a moral voice, clear voice on Israel and so many other topics, hit us up and become a member. It's just a couple of pounds a month, and it means so much to Razi and Daniel in terms of keeping all this vital programming on the air. Thank you both, and Happy New Year to all.
When Jonathan says a couple of pounds a month, it's the American use of couple, not the British use of couple, which is two. But yeah, it's not a lot. And also for our Israeli viewers, a new textbook of Americanism is also available in Hebrew, translated with the help of the Ayn Rand Center Israel. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. But Anders, where can people find more from you now and in the new year?
You can find me on Substack, andersingemarson.substack.com. And piggybacking on what Jonathan said about reading Ayn Rand, my latest article actually is discussing one of her profound statements, one of her many profound statements. Anyone who fights for the future lives in it today.
And Jonathan, where can people find more from you?
Manage money professionally at capitalistpig.com.
I'm Razi Ginsburg on X. I'm also here on this channel where you can find me most days. And of course, the Ayn Rand Centre UK is now also on Substack, so make sure you subscribe to that. Thanks, guys. Happy New Year. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Yeah, our content in the coming year will hopefully continue to be, go in the direction that it has gone these past few months with, even when we talk about a war, which isn't easy. Positive things can happen in war, have happened in the past few months. Let's hope a lot more happens in the coming year, and not just when it comes to war. Yeah, Happy New Year, and we'll see you back here on this channel tomorrow with the Daily Objective. The reality show is taking the day off, but we'll be back in a couple days. Thanks.